Welcome to Dune Chapter by Chapter. I'm Dominic. So in the last chapter that I discussed, it was basically we saw the complete destruction of House Atreides, and we saw how Yui was double-crossed by the Harkonnens, even though he kind of knew he was going to be, and Yui was knifed in the back by Piter de Vries. And then we also saw how they wanted to wring the information out of Duke Leto because they realized that Lady Jessica and Paul have escaped, or could have possibly escaped, because the two guards that were supposed to dispose of them were found dead by the two guards that were supposed to kill them. So we saw that. That's what went down in the last chapter. And of course, Duke Leto got to unleash his poison gas tooth, but he wasn't able to get the primary target, the Baron Harkonnen. He just took out the captain of the guards and Piter de Vries. So now this chapter is all about Paul and Jessica after they got away from that thopter in the desert that crashed after they took out the two Harkonnens. And so now we find out what happened to them after that, and they have been rescued by Duncan Idaho in a stolen thopter, in one of his thopters, and he's taken them to a hiding place that he knows of in the desert. And now but he's not with them, he's gone again. He's left for somewhere else, and not sure where that is. So they're both in this hiding place, and it's at night, and they're set up inside of a still tent, and morning's gonna come pretty soon, and the way it is on Arrakis, you have to stay down during the day because it's so hot, and travel at night. So now this is kind of like a one-on-one conversation with Lady Jessica and her son Paul. And the interesting thing about this chapter is we see the effects of all the heavy amounts of spice that's on Arrakis, all the effects that it's starting to have on Paul's consciousness. And not only that, but it's working in combination with all the training that he's had, all the Mentat training, all the training from his mother, from all the Bene Gesserit training. All that stuff is now starting to trigger and open his awareness. So the first hints of that is he recalls when he saw the thopter coming down, his mother was kind of worried and wanted to run. Are these the Harkonnens? And then Paul knew right away, just observing the way the thopter was being flown, he knew it was Duncan Idaho, where now he's like surpassed his mother on a mental level. And so we get it. This is a very introspective chapter because it's all Paul's inner thoughts and kind of like a lot of inner monologues in this one. And it's interesting to see how the spice has an effect on his consciousness in this one. And now he's starting to see more and more of the future, where before, at the beginning of the book, he would see the future like in dreams and stuff like that. But now he's starting to see it while he's awake. He's starting to have flashes of the future. And so that's what's really interesting. And, to put this in its place, Dune came out in the 1960s. And in the 1960s, the psychedelic drugs were starting to hit the scene big time with acid and mushrooms and all that kind of stuff. And I always compare spice to its real world equivalent is probably like psychedelic mushrooms or DMT. And, that they can have the same kind of effects on a person's consciousness, where their consciousness can be, well, it depends. It's kind of depends on what research you look at, but some people's minds can be opened up, or some people can have a really bad trip. And I don't know if anyone listening have ever heard of Graham Hancock. He did a really good TED Talk that was actually banned, or as they say, put in the naughty corner, called The War on Consciousness, where all these kinds of drugs that, there's only one, respected, or not really respected, but socially accepted altered state of consciousness, and that's drunkenness. All other forms are pretty much illegal. Well, there's been some legalization since then of some other ones, but for the most part, it's always been just drinking. And how DMT has been outlawed, and all these other ones and stuff. And now he doesn't say that he believes that these things shouldn't be used in a recreational manner, but under the right conditions, there is a lot of good they can actually do. And then people that talk about their experiences sometimes on these drugs are almost like life altering, like especially with DMT. The person's never the same. And spice is kind of like the equivalent of that. I always think of those other types of drugs when I think of spice. And, spice in massive doses, it's like it alters your consciousness in a way and makes you aware in a way that once, like, there's no going back from it. And so now Paul's taken that step forward. His consciousness has been opened up, and now there's no going back. And then him and his mother also realized that spice is a poison. But it is a poison, it's an interesting type of poison. It's a poison that will never kill you as long as you keep taking spice. And so anyone who's on spice, which is pretty much all of humanity at this point, everyone uses spice. It's in all the food. It's in everything. There's spice beer, everything. Everyone has some type of has some level of spice in their system. So people cannot go off of spice. There would be massive withdrawals that would kill everyone. And so that's the interesting realization they have about spice. It's a poison that will never kill you as long as you keep taking it, which I thought was pretty cool. And then they also kind of talk about the family atomics are hidden. The Harkonnens might find them in this chapter, but they're well hidden, and they're hoping that the Harkonnens won't be able to find them. And then Paul, as his mind opens up, he starts to have visions of, the first visions that he sees, like multiple paths for himself, even some paths where he's already dead and things like that. And then he sees like a vision of his father's skull, and he has a vision of these fanatics that are on a holy jihad crusading across the known universe, and they're being led by fanatics that worship him and follow him. And he has the first visions of that, and he's hoping, he doesn't want to go down that path, but he kind of feels like that's inevitable at this point. And that's what he's afraid of. And the other thing about this chapter, I think just this chapter alone should be enough to refute the white savior argument that people always accuse Dune of being a white savior trope. And I did, like a while back, there was an article that came out that accused Dune of being a white savior trope. And then there was a counter article that came out. I'm getting tongue-tied here. A counter article that came out that refuted that. And I thought it did a fantastic job. And I did a video on that article. And then someone in my comment section said, well, just to the layman, whoever, it doesn't matter that it isn't actually a white savior narrative. When people read the first book and they see the movie, that's how they're going to see it as. That's the only thing that matters. Which I have to disagree with that, because there's enough in the first book that if you read closely and pay attention and do some thinking, it's all spelled out right here. He's seen his future, and he sees his father's skull, which we know, if you've read further in the books, his skull is put in a like shrine type place in the second book, Dune Messiah. So this is the oncoming, this is like foreshadowing what's to come down the road in later books, that he can't avoid this fate. This is what's going to happen to him. So I think this here chapter, there's enough evidence, just this one chapter alone, to refute the white savior narrative. So the other thing in this chapter is now Paul, because his mind has been opened up so much, that he realizes he knows his mother is pregnant with his sister, Alia. And Jessica is kind of blown away by this, because she's basically has just been pregnant, and even with her Bene Gesserit training, where she's so in tune with her own biology and her body, she herself has just picked up the first subtle signs that she's pregnant. So she's not showing at all that she's pregnant at this point, but Paul just knows that she is. And so she's kind of taken aback by that. And then Paul's also very frustrated. Like, there's a whole gambit of emotion here. kind of goes from having no emotions, and he doesn't understand why he can't grieve for his father's death, and he's almost like he keeps going into mentat mode and calculating even his own emotions, his own inner thoughts through this like a super logical lens. And he even throws some shade back at his mother, saying, why did you ever have me? You had me just to be your did you have me just to be your Kwisatz Haderach, just to be a tool of the Bene Gesserit, things like that. And then then Jessica realizes, well, she did what she was supposed to do. She was supposed to have a daughter for the Bene Gesserit and marry that daughter off to the Harkonnens, but now where everything has gone to hell, it doesn't matter now at this point. It doesn't matter that she has a daughter, because House Harkonnen has basically destroyed House Atreides. Now they're on the run in the desert, and it's revealed in this one that they start listening in on with their almost like a radio device they have in their still tent. They're starting to listen in on all the combat, on all the frequencies going back and forth between Atreides men fighting against the Harkonnen guys, and this is where they discover that the Harkonnens are being helped by the Sardaukar. And the Sardaukar actually raided a guild bank because they want to then pin that on the Atreides, so then even the guild will be against the Atreides. But then they come to the realization, or Paul comes to the realization, because his mind is working so fast now, that, well, they're not really the superpower. The Spacing Guild don't really own Dune. And because he realized that because there's no satellites. And this is something that came up earlier in the book. And it was an important point. And now we see why in this chapter, because Paul figures it out. Why the Spacing Guild doesn't have any satellites over Dune. And it's because the Fremen are really the people who control the planet Arrakis. It's really the Fremen, because they have mastered the desert, and they have all the access to all the spice they could ever use. And they're using that to pay off the Spacing Guild, and to keep the Spacing Guild from putting any satellites, so no one can see what's actually going on the surface of Arrakis. So Paul figures that out. And and then he says to his owner, we don't need the Spacing Guild. We have to go and find the Fremen. And then he talks about the Missionary Protectiva and how they planted that religion there. And even now he's thinking, well, we can take advantage of that. We can get in with the Fremen, and that's how we can survive. And the Fremen run the show here on this planet. And that's the secret that nobody realizes, is the Fremen, they kind of own it. They got they have the desert power, as he explains in this chapter. And whoever has the desert power, they're the ones that has the upper hand on this planet over the Harkonnens, over the Spacing Guild, over everyone. And so Paul figures that out. And the other interesting thing, after we learn that Lady Jessica is pregnant, also Paul figures it out, because now his observational skills are like dialed up to 11 because of his consciousness being changed because of his Bene Gesserit training and all the spice consumption, is that he realizes that they're Harkonnen. He says to his mother, well, we are Harkonnen. Just look at just observe your own face. You're the daughter of the Baron Harkonnen. You're his daughter. I can see it right in you now. I can see, I can see all the little genetic markers and everything in your face. And so anyway, Jessica is like totally blown away by this, because you got to remember the Bene Gesserit, they keep all their breeding programs. Everything is totally secret, so no one knows who their parents were when the Bene Gesserit are, chosen for the breeding program. But Paul's awareness has gone so great he can see through that, so he knows that his mom is actually part of the Harkonnen family, and so is he. So it's kind of interesting. They're really going to keep it in the family there, because they were going to marry essentially someone who, Fade Ryutha is basically Paul's cousin, and so they would have married two cousins together to breach the bloodline if Paul had been a girl. So you still have the Harkonnen bloodline in there, and that's what the Bene Gesserit wanted to create the Kwisatz Haderach, which it's happening, but not in the way they want it to at all, because they want it to control the Kwisatz Haderach. But they're not going to be able to do that. So no such luck there. So this was an interesting chapter. And the other thing, whenever I read this chapter, I love the kind of like the setting, like the kind of like calm, like they're kind of like in the eye of the storm here. You have, this massive wild desert around them with all these titanic worms and stuff, and then you have the Sardaukar and the Harkonnens going to duking it out with the remaining Atreides troops and stuff like that. And they're just in this like quiet moment inside their tent, hidden away within the rocks, like under the guise of darkness and stuff like that, just waiting for the daylight to come up, so that, so they can hide from the sunlight for the rest of the day and then move again at night. And so I kind of envision, these like all these nice shadows being cast by the dunes and the rocks, and the two moons bright up in the sky and stuff like that. So this is another scene that if they shoot it right or something, it's going to look really good up on screen for the film that comes out next year. And this is another scene, like there's going to be so many things that, with the way Denis Villeneuve is, and with the director of photography that he brought on, Greg Fraser, and stuff like that. I think you're going to see some really amazing, gorgeous shots in that movie coming up. And because this is one that really evokes a really nice image in my mind, like a very romantic image of like a desert at night, and they're in this moment of quiet, having this really internalized talk among themselves, and then Paul searching his own feelings and stuff like that before more danger comes their way. So really cool stuff. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one.